Thank you. Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the support group this week. Today we have a special guest who's going to be talking to you about our Life Stories program. This is Linda Michie. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about Linda. So Linda's background is primarily in community services management, projects and care, and Linda's spent about 35 years working across the mental health and aged care sectors, both private and not-for-profit. Linda was the carer for both of her parents and her best friend of 15 years. And that journey very much shaped Linda's approach and direction along the way. Linda took a year off after all of that to decide what she wanted to do next. And driven by that personal experience and her love for all creatures great and small, Linda decided to undertake further study in 2019-2020 to help bring together her professional and personal experience over the years with the intention of moving into private counselling practice, specialising in grief and loss and pet grief and loss. Linda currently works with private clinics in her private practice and consults with community organisations in the palliative care sector, delivering community education and supporting them through transition. Linda appreciates firsthand the difference it can make having someone walk beside you, having someone just listen or just be present as you need them to be during those challenging times that life brings to all of us. After listening to an interview last year with Paul Livingston on the ABC, it was a conversation featuring Paul's work as a life biographer, along with her love of the written word and genuine interest in people and their stories. The Life Stories program caught Linda's eye. So Linda's been volunteering with MND Queensland and finds that invaluable on so many levels, offering her the chance to make a difference and be present for our clients as they need her to be, and help support growth and change within the Life Stories team and across the organisation. And even after this, Linda's always available for a chat if you want to reach out. So Linda's currently been working with a group of our volunteers that have begun the Life Stories program. And I'm going to hand over to Linda and let her talk you through that. Very interactive session. Linda's looking for your participation and advice. So please feel free to unmute and let us know your thoughts. So I will hand over to Linda and I will go out of the room and I will be back shortly.
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, everybody. Thank you for spending time with me today. I do love a chat, as you'll find. So my intention today is really just to give you a little bit of scope and perspective around the Life Stories program. And as Lisa's touched on, if you've got any questions or any thoughts, and feedback is fantastic as well, or any ideas, just wave at me and I'll pick up and we'll pause and just let me know what you're thinking. It's always good to capture it at that moment while it's in your mind. If you're anything like me, it just drifts out really quickly. So just raise your hands, wave at me if you've got anything you need. So I'll start off just by touching, I guess, on the Life Stories program. There is a brochure that's floating around, and I think MND Queensland is very mindful about supporting members and their families as well, and everybody that's touched by the journey of MND in any way they possibly can. And when the Life Stories concept came up, they went, oh, okay, how can we do this and how can it benefit our members and what can we do to make it work? So they really paid a lot of attention, done a lot of research and put in some great framework around that. And they did a really thorough recruitment, which included myself, for volunteers for the program. And the reason I bring that up really early in the piece, I suppose, is just to reassure everybody that it's been a very mindful, thoughtful process to get to this point. And the volunteers are very carefully picked, they're handpicked, and they are people, which I'll touch on a little bit later, like myself, who genuinely want to be here. So the idea of the Life Stories program, I guess, is, you know, everybody has a story to tell. And one of the things I hear from members and just generally in some of the other programs I've just kind of had a bit of a look at around the country is I hear a lot of, well, what I have to say isn't very interesting. And I think we can all be a little bit like that. I think we all tend to kind of step back and shrink back. Not everybody, but I think there's that, nobody really wants to hear what I have to say. And I think on that note, the beauty of the Life Stories program is it creates a space for you to step back from the MND journey and make it all about you and talk about you and what matters to you and your story. And whether that be, it can be a big story, it can be a small story, it can be anything you want it to be. And I think the way we approach it while we're on that level, I'll just move away from the softer side for a minute. So if, for example, you're reading the brochure or you want to inquire a little bit more, the best way to do it is to have a chat to your MND advisor or support worker and say, hey, I watched that thing with Linda the other day, or I was reading a brochure and I'm really interested about it. The process is there is a framework around it. We have to be mindful of structure, of course, but having said that, don't be scared off by that, because it's there for a reason. But once you're in the program, we're extremely flexible in our approach, and we make it all about you, and we make it flexible for you according to your MND journey as well. So once you have that conversation, what happens is there's a form that you fill out, which is a referral form, and that form just gets a little bit of information from you and kind of how you want the story maybe to look like. And if you don't really have any idea, that's okay too, because that's what we're here for. That's what the volunteers are here for. So that referral comes through to the office. The office then connects with one of the volunteers, and we give you a quick phone call and go, hey, let's use the lovely Rose as an example. So I go, hi Rose, how you going? I'm one of the volunteers from the Life Stories program, and we have a little bit of a chat to you and just get an idea of where you're at and how you're feeling and what you're wanting and what you want it to look like, and kind of brainstorm. And then from there, once somebody's ready to go, we send you some consent forms just to get some general permission and just to make sure everybody has a good understanding of what's going on. And then we start the process. And when I say process, that's probably not the right word. So the Life Stories journey is probably around 5 to 10 visits with a volunteer. Now that visit can be remote online, as we are today, which is kind of becoming the norm, which I still find a bit bizarre, but technology's there for a reason, it's all good. So it can be online, it can be face-to-face, COVID willing, of course. There's a number of different ways that we can do it. And in those 5 to 10 visits, it's a very interactive process with your volunteer. You stay engaged with the office and engaged with your support worker or advisor, but the volunteer catches up with you. The sessions are generally an hour. We're very mindful of the MND journey, so we're very flexible with that. Sometimes that hour might be 40 minutes one week, or it might go a couple of minutes over, or it might be you've had 3 face-to-faces and you might have a bunch of appointments one day, and it might be easier to have it online, for example. So there's a lot of flexibility around that. And after each session, the volunteer goes away, because the sessions are recorded, which is part of the consent form. So the volunteer goes away, and depending on the arrangement you have, they transcribe it all. And it's very much your voice. I can't emphasise that enough. It's your voice that we're capturing. It's not our job to change words or change anything. It's our role to support you and help, and just capture your voice as you want it to be. So we transcribe it all, and then we give you the opportunity to look over it again, whether that usually email, I think, is one of the most popular ways. Again, we'll work with you, and you might flick it back. If I'm your volunteer, for example, Rose might say to me, oh, Linda, this section here, I kind of missed this bit out when we were on the beach that day. So it's that back and forth thing, and shaping it to look like the way you want it to be. And so we do that for 5 to 10 visits, depending how long it takes. Through that process, you might want to include photographs, for example. You don't have to, but if you want to create an actual book with some photos in, it's that we get you to, and again, we're open to platforms, but at the moment we use Officeworks, and we use their photo book service, which is really, really good. They are preparing one for me, one they prepared earlier. I'm not too sure where that is. but it's just, we go back and forth with that, and it's very much about you creating the way it looks and creating an account, and I would have access to that account, for example, to just help you along the way if it's necessary. So it's just that back and forthing very gently as you want it to be. And then at the very end of the session, at the very end of those sessions, it's just looking at that final draft or final way it looks and then just signing off. And in between that, in all of that, having said all of that, when with the sessions, one thing we do suggest, and it's up to the individual and their individual circumstances, it can be helpful for that person to be on their own. You know, family members or friends or carers may need to be present as part of the MND journey to make sure you're safe and okay. But having said that, sometimes it's easier to just talk freely when you're by yourself, just with your volunteer, if that makes sense. So that's certainly something to think about as well. And again, with the book, it's very much, it doesn't have to be a book as such. You know, it might, if somebody said to me, oh my God, Linda, you have to write a book tomorrow, I'd be like, really? I would just probably, if it'd be a Linda-shaped hole in the door, I just probably wouldn't know where to start. But having said that, it can be, you know, one of our members that has already done one of the books, she chose to create a book in chronological order going right back to when she was a child. Another member, for example, just kind of touched on life briefly, but was very focused on his professional career, and that was very important to that person. Again, it gets back to what matters to that person. If you want to add photos, you can. You might want to create a recipe book. You might be an artist. There might be something that you've done in your life that's particularly significant and that's important to you, and you go, you know what, when the grandchildren read this one day, this is just an example, you know, they will go, wow, okay, that makes a lot of sense, that's going to really help me. So there's all sorts of different ways you can look at it. I'm going to take a breath, which I don't do very often, so I'm just going to take a breath for a moment. Does anybody want to say anything, share, have any questions before I start rabbiting on again? I've rendered you all speechless. Well, that's not unusual for me to do that. Okay, and the other thing as well is there's a tremendous amount of privacy and confidentiality. So your story is your story. The consent forms are very clear, so we don't go and talk to anybody about it outside of you and perhaps the support worker and anything like that. It's very private, and family members, for example, or carers or anything like that, we will only talk to them if you give us permission. So it's very much a very personal journey. Again, I get back to that. It's your story. It's your story to tell. It's a chance to step aside from the MND journey for a little while and just kind of do something a little bit different. And I think for people, capturing their life story, however that looks to them, is different for many reasons. And it might be about just, you know, it's a very therapeutic process as well. You know, it's good to just talk and share stories and remind yourself of stuff that you forgot about 40 years ago. That side of